Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are